Our last speaker is Vinay Varanasi. Vinay Varanasi is a storyteller par excellence. He has dedicated himself to bringing alive the ancient tales that resonate through time. He's a prolific speaker in many forums, both physical and online, on a host of topics from Ramayana to Mahabharata and the Puranas. I myself, I follow him on Instagram. I have also been lucky enough to listen to him live a couple of times, and I've been quite enthralled. The last time I listened to him in a particular forum, he spoke non-stop for 2.5 hours, and nobody, 187 of us in that auditorium, not one person got up to even for a sip of water or go to the washroom. He can hold audiences like that, and he's been gifted with both the ability to hold the knowledge and the ability to disseminate it with lots of ease and ease for all of us to understand, appreciate, acknowledge, and enjoy. Vinay Varanasi is going to talk to us about Kshetras and Bhaktas, sacred spaces, and devotees of Bharat. Vinay Varanasi, welcome.
It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak at a festival like this, which my understanding, in my opinion, is something that really brings together so much of Jnanam and Bhakti. And the way I see it, I don't see them as two different sides of a coin. I see them as two complementary facets that come together and make this whole. And I would just like to firstly extend my gratitude to all of you for having me. And secondly, to all of you who are watching this, I also want to issue a very important disclaimer that by no standards, by no accounts, am I a scholar. The lineup of speakers prior to me over the past 2 days has left me a little overwhelmed, because these are all people who have dedicated their entire years and years of tapas of theirs has gone into the prolific knowledge that they have to share. I come from just a space of pure passion and pure interest, and I cannot count myself to be a scholar on any account. So should I make any mistakes, I seek your pardon, but I also seek your, and I rather invite you on this journey today where when we were speaking about what could be an appropriate topic, the topic that was suggested was that about Kshetras and Bhaktas as a whole. Because if we look at this idea of Kshetra and Bhaktas, they're actually two intertwined ideas. Very often in the modern context of Hinduism, we have now segregated them. We have a certain idea that, oh yes, there is a temple, I have to go there for a certain darshan and that's it. Beyond this, beyond the idea of going there, of if I go there, something good happens to me, there's actually a phenomenal amount of knowledge that is contained in a kshetra. And very often, more often than not, that kshetra has some connection with someone or multiple such someones who have actually created or have created an environment for divinity to reside there. So today, before we explore a little bit more about kshetras and bhaktas, just a little bit of time to understand what is the definition that we will be looking at, because there are many technical definitions for the idea of both kshetra and for bhakta. But I just want to be able to anchor us with two definitions that I think or I find deep meaning in. For me, the ideal definition of bhakti, of course, there are Narada Bhakti Sutras, there are so many technical definitions of what an ideal bhakta is considered to be. But I think I take inspiration from the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about the idea of Ananya Bhakti, where the word Anya means something else. In Anya Bhakti, which many of us automatically, constantly slip into in our lives, there is a certain association with wanting something from Paramatma. But Ananya Bhakti is about overcoming even that. It's not about discarding it. It's about overcoming it. It means experiencing it and then putting it aside and reaching a point where apart from Paramatma, there is nothing else that is wanted. So the difference between Ananya Bhakti and Anya Bhakti is that in Anya Bhakti, we want something from Paramatma. And even that is necessary. But in Ananya Bhakti, we want Paramatma. And this idea of Bhakti is a very powerful one. Because in this concept, it is not those who have Shastra Jnanam alone. It is not those who have Pandityam alone. It is not those who have Anubhavam alone. It is a combination of all these things that comes together for a Bhakta. And that is why we see phenomenal stories of Bhaktas somewhere who are not necessarily connected to a larger idea of who is the Jiva, who is Paramatma, what is Jagat. what are the three Vedantas that are in discussion, but still they're able to sprout absolute pearls of wisdom because it comes from experience. So this idea of bhakti is very powerful, that when you hold on to that constant idea of Paramatma and everything else merges, in that state of bhakti, something magical happens. So that or such bhaktas are we're going to look into as much as time permits today. We will look into a few such stories of such bhaktas. That is one idea of bhakti that we will be taking into consideration for today's discussion. And what is a kshetra then? Because typically, if we look at kshetras in the modern context, as I said, a kshetra for us, we always recognize a kshetra by a temple, by a physical superstructure inside which there is a sanctum sanctorum and other mantapas. And in that Garbhagudi is placed the Moola Virat, or the consecrated idol. Now, our entire focus most often is in that particular space. Okay, we go to Kanchipuram, we go to Kamakoti Pitham, we go to see Kamakshi. But as my gurus have always stressed upon, that temple, that physical superstructure is just a reminder. In a kshetra, the ground is energized. So the best definition of a kshetra is that which has been given from time, across time immemorial. A kshetra is nothing but an energized field. And in the context of bhakti, why is a kshetra important? Because bhakti is about growing that love. If love were to be considered a plant that one waters, or bhakti is considered to be a plant that we water with love, with care, with attention to Paramatma, a kshetra is that place where that bhakti ripens, where the fruit of bhakti ripens. And that is what you see in kshetras, that you see so many such kshetras that are connected to bhaktas because they have gone there and experienced divinity in completeness. And that completeness is such an overwhelmingly moving experience for them that when they go there, something magical happens to them. So today we look at these two concepts, bhaktas and kshetras, and we look at the various layers, the interactions, the various kinds of interactions and emotions that exist between Bhakta and Bhagavan. Because Bhakta and Bhagavan meet at that center point called Kshetra. A Kshetra can be of many types. One is a Sahaja Siddha Kshetra. Sahaja Siddha means by nature that space is energized. Then what happens is to this very energetic space, a Bhakta is drawn and that Bhakta finds and is able to experience divinity. Then based on that Bhakta's experience, several of us go there. We don't even have to look at this purely in terms of mythology. Even historically, when we go to a certain place, or if there is a museum of sorts, we say, oh, this is where this person used to live. That person's house becomes a museum. Why? Because by virtue of that person living there, there's a certain energy that that person has captured. It's as simple as taking a little bit of camphor and placing it on your palm. Even much after that camphor is gone, the aroma of that camphor remains on. That is the idea of a bhakta and a kshetra. That a bhakta comes to a kshetra, does tapas, experiences Paramatma, and they're actually able to experience the Paramatma with all their sense organs. Then much after that bhakta is gone, even then that energy of Paramatma stays there. And our intention of going to a kshetra is to be able to experience that Paramatma, not just to go there and to collect Tirupati Laddu. That is not the idea of kshetra darshan. That is a side component. That is almost a byproduct. But the objective of kshetra is to go there and to do sadhana, not to treat it as a mere tourist kind of an approach. So this idea that in a kshetra, there is Paramatma that comes all the way from beyond the Chaturdasha Lokas, and there is a Bhakta who comes with all his experience, and they meet at that beautiful point. And today, our hope and our intention is to look at what happens when Paramatma, when Bhakta and Bhagavan meet. So I think one of the first things that happens for a Bhakta who is drawn towards not just a kshetra, but towards Paramatma, is that intense longing to see Paramatma. That longing is so much for a Bhakta that in that state of Ananya Bhakti, which we spoke about, in that state of absolute desperation, and desperation I mean in a very positive sense, in that desperation to see Paramatma, nothing else matters. And one such Bhakta, who is a phenomenal Rama Bhakta that we celebrate today, this Bhakta had only one desire, that he should see Rama. Like any Bhakta, at some point that becomes a maddening desire where anybody you see, that's what you'll ask. So there are various versions of what happens to this Bhakta and how this story takes form. But I take one version that says this Bhakta used to do Ramanama Japam. And every day at the end of his Ramanama Japam, he would, whatever Japam he did, he would take a little bit of water and said, Yetat Phalam Shri Sita Ramachandra Parabrahmatpana Mastu. Whatever fruit is coming from this Japam, I release it to the feet. I offer it, not release it. I offer it to the feet of Rama and Sita. Now, wherever he would offer this would be at the base of a small tree, a small shrub that he would leave it at every day. And after a prolonged period of time, one fine day when he was doing the same thing after his japam, this was his daily ritual. When he went ahead to do this, all of a sudden from this tree emerges this massive beam of light, and out comes not Rama, contrary to what we might think, but out comes suddenly a preta that is disembodied, a preta that does not have a body, but has some form to it. And this bhakta is very, very shaken, and he doesn't know what it is. He's not scared, because that's a beautiful component of bhakti. Where there is bhakti, there is no fear. There is an absolute trust in the Lord. But there is also some amount of amazement as to who is this and what is happening. So this preta speaks to this bhakta and says, by the virtue of your tapas, by the virtue of your Ramanama japam, every day the water that you have poured here has released me. I have been stuck here for eons altogether. Now the power of your japam is so much that now I have been released from this bondage. So now I can move on to urdhlokas, to higher realms. But this has been possible for me because of the upakaram that you have done for me, because of the favor that you have lent me. Knowingly or unknowingly, you have helped me. So it is my duty, therefore, to do a pratyupakaram. It is my duty to return a favor. So what can I do for you? What else will a bhakta want but Bhagavat Anubhuti, Bhagavat Darshanam? So that's all he says. This bhakta says, give me Rama Darshan. And the preta smiles and he says, listen, I said I can give you something, but that doesn't mean I can give you something that is beyond my reach. Rama is Shuddha Parabrahma. He is Shuddha Brahma Paratpara Ram. And who can reach that Rama? I cannot reach that Rama. So that is way too much for me to give you. But ask me for something else. The bhakta says, absolutely not. You asked me what I wanted. I want Rama. So then this preta thought about it. Rama himself is inaccessible because he is Nirguna Nirakara Parabrahma Tattva. That divine experience, which is beyond words, beyond speech, beyond any kind of physical experience. But is there a way then to reach him? Because we are saying he's inaccessible. Again, if you have to reach that Bhagavan, again, you only have to reach him through a bhakta. And that bhakta is Anjaneya Swami, Hanumanta. So this preta thinks, look, I cannot take you to Rama directly. But what I can do is I can take you to Hanumanta. And once you have Hanumanta, he will automatically take you to Rama. This is exactly what we are singing in the Hanuman Chalisa every day as well. Tumare bhajan Rama ko pave. One version says Tumare bhajan Rama ko bhave, which means they move Rama. The other one is Tumare bhajan Rama ko pave. Your bhajans attract Rama. They are able to hold Rama. This is the idea of Bhakti Vashya. This is what we are reading in the Lalita Sahasranamam as well. Bhakti Vashya Bhayapaha. That Paramatma can be caught in Bhakti. So Anjaneya Swami knows the rahasyam. He knows the secrets of how to catch Paramatma. I can take you to Anjaneya Swami. I cannot take you to Rama. So this bhakta is thrilled and he says, okay, take me to Anjaneya Swami. He says, why do I need to take you? The preta asks him, why should I need to take you to Anjaneya Swami? Anjaneya Swami himself is coming to you every day. So the bhakta says, what are you talking about? And at this point, the preta tells him, do you know, every day you are giving upanyasam. You are giving a discourse on the Ramayana. Every evening when you do this on the ghats of Kashi, every evening, if you notice, there is an elderly man who comes, and he comes and sits right at the end of the Pravachana Mandiram, wherever you speak. And as soon as it's over, he goes. And he sits in such a way that nobody wants to go close to him because there are flies all over his body. He's filled with terrible odor. Nobody wants to come close at all. That person, he sits there, and when he sits, he cries. Why? Because Bashpavari Paripurna Lochanam Marutim Namata Rakshasantakam. The one who hears Yatra Yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam Tatra Tatra Kritamastakkanjali. Wherever Raghunatha's Kirtanas are heard, wherever Raghuvara's Charitram is spoken of, there he appears and there he tears up because he's so happy to hear Bhagavan's glory that this bhakta has not even realized that Anjaneya Swami is the one who is coming every day to his upanyasam. This bhakta is already at a level where he's giving upanyasams about Ramayana, but he has not realized that Hanuman always is going to be present and has been coming. So the preta has said, look, till this point, I could tell you. Now you go. When the next time you're giving your pravachana, you go and you see Anjaneya Swami automatically will come himself over there. So this bhakta is delighted, and this bhakta sits the next day to give his pravachanam. And when he's giving it, up till now, his entire focus on the pravachanam was on Rama and the Ramayanam that he used to share. But now when he's giving it, his singular focus is, where is Hanuman, where is Hanuman, where is Hanuman? This is sadhana, anveshana, looking out, looking out, looking out. It's not that he's not there. It's just about being able to find him. And with this anveshana buddhi, sure enough, when the Ramayanam began, when the pravachanam began, comes this elderly gentleman wearing such filthy clothes, dressed so horribly that nobody would go close to him. And as soon as he comes, now The Pravachana Karta, the one who is seated here, the Bhakta who wants to see Rama, he is in his own dilemma. He cannot get up and say, oh, Hanuman has come, let me stop, because he has to still go on with the Pravachana. So he finishes the Pravachanam, but throughout he's watching this elderly gent. And at the end of that Pravachanam, as soon as it's over, before people crowd him, and that happens on a daily basis, because many of you who attend spiritual discourses would be familiar that when a Pravachana Karta, the one who is giving the Pravachan, at the end of that Pravachan, typically people go and seek blessings from such beings. So now there is also a line for him, but he wants to catch Anjaneya Swami, because Anjaneya Swami will not come after that. Anjaneya Swami will just come, hear Ramakatha, and he will vanish. So this Bhakta somehow manages to quickly finish that, by which time this elderly gentleman is gone. He sees him walking at a certain distance and he runs to him. When he runs to him, this elderly gentleman says, don't come near me. Look at how filthy I am. Don't come. Don't touch me. And he says, Swami, I know who you are. You're none other than Hanuman. Again, the old elderly gentleman looks at him. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. But this time he does something strange. He runs away. And this Bhakta is in such a state of desperation that he will not let him out of his sight. So he also runs behind him. He runs behind him, and as he runs behind him, he realizes and he sees the form, that it is no longer that elderly gentleman. He says he sees Kanchanadri Kamaniya Vigraham, the one who is like a mountain of molten gold. Kanchanadri Kamaniya Vigraham, Parijata Taramula Vasinam, Bhavayami Pavamana Nandanam. That son of Pavana, that son of the wind god, who has now taken this beautiful form, like looking like molten gold, is running, and this Bhakta has realized who it is, but he can't keep pace with him. So he runs further, and he suddenly finds that Hanuman has absolutely disappeared, because Hanuman can go where he wants and how he wants. But this Bhakta is now in a dilemma. Where did he go? And when he tires and he's not able to breathe anymore, he stops at a tree, where he sees at the base of a tree, there is a woman who is worshipping Anjaneya Swami. And she is least affected. She doesn't know all of this that has happened. She's just happily sitting at the base of a peepal tree, and she's worshipping Anjaneya Swami over here. And he comes to her panting and he says, did you see Anjaneya Swami? And she says, did I see Anjaneya Swami? I'm worshipping him only. He's right here. And then this Bhakta looks and realizes there is this massive Vigraham over here. And this Bhakta breaks down looking at the size of the Vigraham. And from the Vigraham, this Bhakta has his first darshanam of Maruti, of Anjaneya Swami. And there Anjaneya Swami blesses him and he says, what is it that you want? And what will this Bhakta ask for? He says, give me Ramadarshan. But this spot where the Bhakta asked for this varam, and Anjaneya Swami said, what? Your sankat is what? That you're not able to see Prabhu now. I will remove that sankatam for you. Have absolutely no fear. This Bhakta is none other than Tulsidas, and this space where this happened is today's Sankat Mochan Mandir in Kashi Kshetram. One of the most important spaces that one must experience when you go there. Because when you go there, there's a very different energy in this Kshetram. That is because this is where Anjaneya Swami's energy still abides. Of course, the story goes on from here, and Hanuman eventually does lead Tulsidas, Goswami Tulsidas, to be able to experience Rama. And Tulsidas has the Anubhuti of Rama because of Hanuman. But paying homage to the idea that Bhakta, in the journey of Bhakta towards Bhagavan, other Bhaktas help him. This is what Adi Shankarach spoke about when he said Satsangatve Nissangatvam. When you keep Satsangam, automatically you will find the divine within you. Satsangatve, Nissangatvam, Nissangatve, Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve, Nishchalatatvam, Nishchalatatvam, Jivan Mukti. That ultimately, if you want that Jivan Mukta Avastha, that state where you are freed from any kind of attachment to the body, you just have to associate with Satsanga. But that Satsangam who is here, in this case, it is Anjaneya Swami. There is no greater Sangam that is possible. So when we hear stories like this, a certain degree of cynicism can also come in, saying, okay, for someone as Mahan as Tulsidas, he could have Anjaneya Swami Sangam. Can I have the company of Hanuman? If I call, will Hanuman come? But that is the power of bhakti. That bhakti is just about calling. It is about doing one's job sincerely. And that job, if it is done sincerely, can bring Paramatma down to you. In this case, Anjaneya Swami is the one who came, sought and looked and paid attention to Tulsidas. It is not the reverse. It is only when Tulsidas knew that it was Hanuman, then he went after them. But even before that, Hanuman was coming. So this idea of bhaktas and kshetras. So today or tomorrow, whenever it is that you visit or you think of the Sankat Mochan Mandir in Kashi Kshetram, remember that this is the place not only where he gave darshanam to Tulsidas, but for people like us who may not be so easy to access, it may not be easy for us to approach Paramatma in that form, all we have to do is keep his name on the lips. That is the idea of Sangam. Sangam is not just about physical company. Sangam means being close to somebody. How does one be close to somebody? Constantly think of them. Constantly thinking of them is vicharana. So this is one beautiful aspect of bhakti, that bhakti is not about abandoning emotions. It's about holding on to all the emotions we have, but just turning them 180 degrees towards Paramatma. Typically, these emotions are turned towards prapancha. Oh, I'm attached to this person. I'm attached to these things. I'm attached to this identity. Take all that attachment and turn it to him. Where is he? I'm attached to him. Why is he not coming? What am I going to do for him? This idea comes out beautifully in this episode, relating how one bhakta supports another bhakta in his journey. But when a bhakta goes closer and closer to Paramatma, something else also happens. It's not always so rosy, and unfortunately, our depiction or our engagement with bhakti has become so cinematic that we largely think bhakti is just about, oh, that moment, when one jyoti goes from a bhakta and merges into the Lord. While these are beautiful components that happen in the journey of bhakti, it is not always such a smooth sailing ride. Bhaktas also go through human emotions, and those human emotions stand as tests to how much has that bhakti ripened. And there is one such bhakta who appears in Kashi Kshetram. Since we are in that Mahakshetram of Kashi in Kartika Masam, I take your permission and your anumati to explore one more katha in this Mahakshetram before we explore other kshetrams. Because what we are doing is a Manasika Yatra today. It is not just telling a story. Through the medium of a story, we are already now in Sankat Mochan. So from Sankat Mochan, if we walk a little bit, we'll be in Assi Ghat. So let's be there on the ghats, where one fine day, Veda Vyasa himself appears in Kashi Kshetram, and he does not come alone. He comes with 10,000 of his students to Kashi Kshetram. And when Veda Vyasa appears in Kashi Kshetram, he comes with the idea of doing sadhana, as does any bhakta. He doesn't come to take Instagram reels. He comes there to actually focus on Shiva. So when he's doing this, he is a sannyasi. So he also has a niyamam. He has a rule that he will take bhiksha on a daily basis. Now he has 10,000 students. So typically how it would work in this setup was that the students, more often than not, would go and ask for bhiksha. This is uncha vritti, as many of you would know. And it is whatever food would come, they would manage in that particular day with that food. Now, Kashi Kshetram is a kshetram where dharma has always been practiced. And one of the dharmas is Atiti Satkara, that when somebody comes to our home, we honor them. So when Vyasa students would go, first of all, and if anybody comes begging for alms at your door, then itself you're supposed to give. When Veda Vyasa students himself are coming on behalf of Vyasa, then who is it who's not going to honor him? So naturally, every day they were getting sufficient bhiksha for all those 10,000 students and Vyasa himself. So in the course of this, as time progresses, because bhaktas need to mature in their own journey, and this story is not being told with any disrespect to Vyasa, so I invite you to also see it from that perspective. The story communicates a larger ideal for us. The purpose of why we are here is to be able to understand how can we enrich our journey towards that Paramakshetra of Atma. It is not just to criticize or to look down on any bhakta. So as we come closer to Vyasa's story, we see that Shiva takes notice of Vyasa sadhana, and Shiva thinks to himself, okay, it is time for a Leela to emerge now. And he goes to Annapurna or Parvati or Vishalakshi, call her by whichever name you have, or Bhavani, because in this kshetram she is present in so many forms, but predominantly Kashi Vishwanatha and Kashi Vishalakshi, Annapurna. Vishalakshi and Annapurna have two temples, but the goddess is one. And he goes to Bhavani, and Vishwanatha tells Bhavani, in Kashi, Vyasa has been asking for bhiksha every day and doing his tapas. I want you to do a Leela because you are Annapurna. You are the one who controls the movement of food and who has access to food in Kashi Kshetram. So I want you to ensure that when Vyasa appears today, when Vyasa students come today, I do not want them to have any kind of bhiksha given to them. So Annapurna asks, how is this possible? So at this point, Shiva responds saying, it's very simple. All that you need to do is just ensure that you enter the minds of every person who is asking for bhiksha, every person who is about to give the bhiksha, I beg your pardon. Every person who is about to give the bhiksha to Vyasa, just ensure that when they are about to give the bhiksha, they suddenly don't want to give bhiksha anymore. This is Paramatma's leela. So Annapurna agrees because he has a Mahasankalpam and Shakti is Mahamaya. In 1 second, she can cloud our judgment. And as this goddess does that, when Vyasa students go out that day, nobody gives them bhiksha. So they come back after a whole day of searching for bhiksha. They come back with nothing. And they tell Vyasa that we did not find anything today. So Vyasa says, okay, perhaps This is what the Lord has destined. And he carries on. The next day, the same thing repeats. The students go to the doors of people asking of Kashi Vasis, asking for bhiksha. And when they go, everybody has some excuse or the other. One lady says, oh, my Yajaman is still doing puja. I cannot give you bhiksha before he finishes his puja, because after he finishes his puja, only can I take out the prasadam. There is no prasad. Naivedyam has not been offered yet. How can I give it to you? Another lady says, no, in my house, somebody just passed away. So we are having sutaka. We cannot give you. Another lady says, oh, the supplies in my house, I need to replenish them. I don't have anything right now. So everywhere they go, they're being faced with this. So they come back and report this also to Vyasa. Vyasa is again perplexed, but it's been 2 days. Vyasa and his students have not eaten. And Vyasa is confused because this is a Mahakshetram, and till now he's never had this problem. This is an Annapurna Kshetram. So how is it that now this is a problem? The third day, Vyasa says, today I will go out and I will see why is it that people are not giving bhiksha. By this time, Vyasa takes a more authoritative tone on this. So Vyasa also goes door to door looking for bhiksha. And when he goes like this, he's also met with the same answers. Everybody has an excuse of why they are not giving bhiksha. And at the end, it's hot. The entire midday in Kashi, Vyasa has spent searching for bhiksha. And it is also humiliating that he has not received bhiksha in one place. And at that point, Vyasa begins to think and he says, Kashi is known as Muktipuri. It is known as a Kshetram where people automatically have Mukti. We know the very famous saying, Kashyantu Maranan Mukti. Those who die in Kashi will attain Mukti. So, are people so confident in Kashi Kshetram that they will attain Mukti that they believe they don't have to do any dharma, they don't have to do any satkaram, they don't have to do any kind of punya karma? Are people in Kashi arrogant? Is that why they are not giving bhiksha? And as Vyasa thinks like this to himself, his anger increases. When his anger increases, he says, you know what? That's the problem. People are proud of themselves. Kashi Vasis have become proud of themselves. So Vyasa takes jalam in his kamandalu and he sprinkles it on the city, on the ground in front of him. And he says, if people in this kshetram are so arrogant and they believe that they are entitled to mukti just like that, I curse the city of Kashi that for 3 generations, nobody here will have mukti. This is Vyasa's curse. As soon as Vyasa pronounces his curse, one person is listening. This is Kshetra Mahima. When we go to a Kshetra, this is the reason we are telling the story is for us to learn something called Kshetra Maryada. Normally itself, it's important to have a control on our speech and what we say, especially if we are doing any kind of sadhana. Sadhana does not mean holding on to a japamala. Simple lighting of a lamp and offering of fruit as naivedyam, simple offering of a flower is also sadhana. As we do sadhana, our words tend to come true. There is vak siddhi that happens. So when we go to kshetras, we have to be especially careful because somebody else is paying attention to what we say, especially in a kshetra. And in this kshetra, when Vyasa pronounces this curse on the city of Kashi, the one who holds that city of Kashi so dearly, Vishwanatha, Akhilanda Koti Brahmanda Nayaka, hears this curse that Vyasa has pronounced and he smiles to himself and he looks at Parvati who is next to him and he says, Parvati, I want you to change your appearance now and go as a vriddhastri, go as an elderly woman, an elderly muttaidua, an elderly sumangali. Go and open the door of our bhavanam. Let our bhavanam look like a normal house in Kashi. Vyasa is standing there. Go there, open the door for Vyasa and ask him to come to our house for bhiksha. I will also change my costume. You also change your costume. So Parvati agrees. She goes and she looks at Vyasa and she says, Mahanubhava, why don't you come to my house? Because my husband, my Yajamani, has just finished karmas that he's supposed to do. So instead of immediately bowing down, this is a very human emotion. This is not about Vyasa. This is about our story. If we're very angry and we shout at somebody and immediately after that somebody comes and speaks to us gently, we will actually bark a little bit more at them. So Vyasa looks at this lady and he says, you want me to come to your house for bhiksha? She says, yes, I want you to come. He says, you know how many students I have? I have 10,000 students with me. And I have a rule. I don't eat in anyone's house. I don't eat anything until all my students have been fed. So can you feed 10,000 students? Only if you can feed 10,000 students, you call me. So she smiles and she says, by God's grace, I can feed not just 10,000 students. I can feed 100,000 students and more. I have no problem. Which is very true. Parvati will never tell a lie. She can very much feed the entire world because she is Annapurna only. So Vyasa agrees. And she says, please come and enter. Our house will be pavitram by the entry of a Mahapurusha like you. Bring all your 10,000 students. We will feed them. So in Annapurna Bhavanam, fed by Annapurna herself, all the 10,000 students of Vyasa eat. Vyasa has also eaten after 3 days of hunger. And this hunger, although it has really burnt him inside out, after he has eaten the food, that too, that is Jagannata's prasadam, Anna Mahalakshmi's prasadam, will it not satiate both his stomach and his heart? When Vyasa is more at ease like this, at that point, when the meal is just about finished, up till now, only she has been serving. He has not come out also. Vishwanatha has not even come out. It is just in the guise, in the costume of an elderly woman, Annapurna is feeding him. After this entire meal is over, this elderly woman, Annapurna, looks at Vyasa and she says, Mahanubhava, thank you for coming. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. I have one request. I know that you are a Vedavedya. You know the essence of Shastrams. You are such a sought after Mahapurusha because we know that you are the one who has split Veda into 3 bhagams. So my Yajamani is also very fond of Dharma and Dharma Chacha. He likes to speak about Dharma with people like you. So can you speak to him for a few minutes? So Vedavyasa says, sure. By now, all his anger is evaporated. He's very happy. So then this from inside, the elderly woman's elderly husband comes out. He is in a costume also. And he looks at Vyasa and asks him one question. He says, you have learnt the essence of Sarvadharmas. You have learnt the essence of Sarvashastras. I can see it in the Tejas. I can see it glowing from your face. So tell me, what is the essence of what you have learnt? Before Vyasa can answer, the elderly man changes his tone and he asks him, so is the essence of what you have learned that if you come and you do not find something, you can curse my city? Is the essence of all dharmam, of all shastram, of all jnanam, of all your satchintana, sadbuddhi, sadvidya, is the essence of all that you can freely utter negative words about my kshetram? This point, Vyasa is horrified, and Vyasa realizes that the one who was standing in front of him is not an elderly gentleman, that is Kashi Vishwanatha himself. Vyasa is shaking and he just falls straight at their feet and he says, I beg your forgiveness. But Parashiva speaks in a tone and he says, Vyasa, this is my city. This city is dearer to me than my own heart. In Pralaya Kalam, when all the worlds dissolve, Kashi Kshetram will not go anywhere. I will protect Kashi Kshetram. That is how much I am fond of Kashi Kshetram. And you came here and you insulted my city. And you said that people here will not have mukti. I give mukti to people. How did you revoke that for people? Vishwanatha is so stern in his tone because he's teaching Vyasa a lesson. Vyasa is a Mahapurusha. We are not telling the story with any disregard to Vyasa. And from tomorrow, we should not say, oh, Vyasa did this, Vyasa did that. No, this is not about Vyasa. This is about what we can do when we go to a kshetram. The story is a reminder. So immediately Vyasa goes and pleads with her saying, Amma, he's about to pronounce a curse, Amma, please stop him. But before anybody can say anything, Vishwanatha says, this city is dearest to my heart. And if anybody comes to my kshetram, Kashi kshetram, and then criticizes my kshetram, I will not allow them to come here. So Vyasa, because you have done this, intentionally or unintentionally, I am also giving you a curse that you cannot stay here in Kashi. You have to go to the other side of Kashi and you have to stay there. That is what we know today as Vyasa Kashi. That is where Vyasa resides. Vyasa is mollified. He's just unable to bear with that sorrow because Kashi, for those sadhakas who go there, once you go to Kashi, you'll want to go to Kashi again and again. Not just to eat malayo, but because that kshetram is so powerful that it will drag you there. Because it is not in Kashi there is Vishwanatha. Kashi itself is Vishwanatha. Kashi ke kan kan mein Mahadev is what the locals say. Every speck of dust in Kashi is Shiva. That is how powerful that kshetram is. Now imagine a bhakta who is not being allowed to go to that kshetram. So he begs saying, please give me the permission that I'll be able to come here. So Vishwanatha softens his curse and he says, okay, you cannot stay here. But he is called Bhole Baba for a reason. He's also very, very simple and he's Karunanidhi. He has so much of Karunyam for his devotees. So he says, Vyasa, you can come. You can come on Ashtami. You can come on Chaturdashi, you can come on Purnima, you can come on Ekadashi, you can come on Parvadinas. That is, on festival days, on celebratory days, you can come to Kashi. On other days, you will not be allowed to come to Kashi. So on these days, you can come and you can have my darshanam, but you have to go back to Vyasa Kashi and you have to stay there. Now, I'm extending the story a little bit because it's important for us to understand how do we respect people when we look at Kshetras and Bhaktas. I can leave the story here, that this is the reason behind Vyasa Kashi. But what is a bhakta's attitude after this? Vyasa can say, oh, Shiva cursed me and now I can never go back and I can only visit on festival days. I'm so unhappy. And he can spend the rest of his time sulking. But he does not do that. On the contrary, what Vyasa does is something that he comes every Parvadinam, every festival day that Vishwanatha has given him permission, Vyasa comes to Kashi till date. This is not something that is written in Puranas. This is something, now the katha that I'm about to share with you is that of a Bhakta Anubhuti, something that another Bhakta experiences after reading this story. That is why today's topic is about Bhaktas and Kshetras, because through the lens of Bhaktas, we are understanding what happens in a Kshetra. So reading the story, it is now, this is mentioned in Skanda Purana, this particular story in Kashi Khanda. So we know that Vyasa does arrive in Kashi on Parvadinas. Now one Bhakta reads this. In the last few decades, this happened. One Bhakta reads this and thinks to himself, Vyasa is supposed to come to Kashi on every Parvadinam. How do I spot Vyasa? Because till date, these Mahapurushas come, every single divine being in the universe pays a daily homage to Kashi. So this Bhakta who was reading about this, he's incidentally a Westerner. And when he reads about this, he thinks, how do I see Vyasa? What am I going to do so that next time Vyasa comes, I'm able to recognize him? So he does something extremely intelligent. On the way to the Vishwanatha temple, in one of the narrow gullies, many of you would have been to Kashi, would know how narrow some of the lanes are, and they are through winding paths. So what this Bhakta does is, he takes a handful of rice and he scatters it on the road, on the path leading to the temple. The lane is very narrow. People are just going, they're just trampling on that rice because of so much other dirt as well. Nobody's particularly paying attention to anything. They're just trampling on that rice and they're going ahead. As they do this man is sitting and watching every single person who is coming. He watches one person go in. That man, that is again, just like Hanuman came to Tulsidas, this person also comes in such a way that nobody even wants to look at him. He smells like filth. He's wearing torn, tattered clothes. He has flies and insects around him. He has open wounds on him that are still leaking with pus and blood. Everybody is so uncomfortable. And when he's looking at all of this man is doing something very different, which nobody else is doing. He looks at the ground and he sees all the rice grains that are scattered. He walks to the temple in such a way that his toe doesn't touch one single rice grain. He goes into the temple like this. He comes out after some time after darshanam, by which time the man who was watching him, this Westerner who was watching him, I will not say Westerner or Easterner because those racial differences are of no relevance to the story. So this Bhakta who is watching him watches the same man coming out. When he's coming out also, he's not stepping on anything. He's very carefully walking such that he doesn't stamp on one single grain of rice. As soon as he crosses that rice, this Bhakta goes and holds on to that man. So that man kicks him and he says, what are you doing? You shouldn't be touching me. Look at how filthy I am. Just like what Hanuman did over there. This Bhakta says, you are Vyasa. He says, on what grounds are you telling me that I'm Vyasa? He continues the appearance. He says, how are you? How do you know that I'm Vyasa? And he says, because Vyasa knows the meaning of food. Vyasa understands the importance of food in Kashi like nobody else. For everybody else, they're just coming here to see Vishwanatha and they're going. But Vyasa sees in every grain of rice, he sees Annapurna, he remembers what happens to him and he will never ever break that code again. So that is the risk. Vishnu. I beg your pardon. I'm actually traveling, so my internet is a little bit flaky. I hope it is only the first time that this is happening, but I assure you, hopefully, it will not happen again. But I think the intensity of the story is also so much that I think Vishwanatha made us all take a 1-minute break. So seeking your pardon for that. And when this idea holds onto a Bhakta's heart, that for Vyasa, coming to Kashi is still important. But for the Bhakta who's reading it, it is about how can I see other such Bhaktas? So what is the eyes? What is the focus that you need to have when you go to a Kshetra? When you go to a Kshetra, I should not get into mindless discussions. Oh, this auto guy took 200 rupees from me. Oh, this flower seller is bargaining for 80 rupees. These are not important things in a Kshetra. We don't know in a Kshetra who is coming as who. Somebody may be a yogi, somebody may be looking ordinary, but everybody in a Mahakshetram, whether it is Kashi, whether it is Kanchi, whether it is Tirupati, whether it is Vrindavan, whichever Kshetram it is in Bharatavarsham, and Bharatavarsham is a Mahakshetram in itself, when we go there, there is control of tongue that is particularly important. Because unless we control that tongue, we do not know who we are speaking to, and we don't want to disregard anybody in any fashion at all. So that story is something that I felt is important, because while we can constantly just talk about, oh, this Bhakta went to this Kshetra and God appeared to them, it's also important for us to understand what happens when we go to a Kshetra. So if we go to a kshetram, and I'm just taking 1 minute to elaborate a little bit on this. In the past few days, I have had the fortune of seeing two of the Jyotirlingas in Madhya Pradesh, that is Omkareshwara and Amareshwara respectively. And when I went here, I was appalled by not the number of people, but the sheer disregard towards the kshetra itself. That disregard appears in multiple forms. It comes when we are happy to use single-use water bottles from various companies, just drink a little bit of water and trash it. I had taken some pictures straight in front of the temple. There is a mound of plastic water bottles. So for those of you who are watching, my invitation to you is when you go to a kshetra, be mindful that the ground that you are dumping on is also Bhagavan. It is not enough to say, I will dump it into the dustbin. It is mindful to say, it is necessary to say, I have to be responsible in my choices. Take a steel bottle, take something that you're not going to throw over there as a plastic piece, because that kshetra is sacred. That is the approach that one ought to have towards any kshetra. That is the approach that Vyasa had. He never stepped on rice over there in that kshetram again. So with such an invitation to see kshetras as this, and taking permission from Kashi, we move on to the idea of, in one case, we saw how one bhakta helps another bhakta, that is Hanuman helping Tulsidas. Then we saw what is a bhakta's struggle with Bhagavan. But then we look at another case where we have a very beautiful verse that says, Bhaktya tutosha Bhagavan Gajayutapaya. That bhakti alone made the Lord so happy that he came to Gajendra's rescue. That Bhagavan is so happy with the idea of bhakti, that just bhakti sulabho, Bhagavan bhakti sulabho is what we say, that just through simple bhakti he can be attained. So in cases like Tulsidas or in Vyasa, they are all people who have done extraordinary amount of sadhana. So in such a case, how is it that we can aim to attain that? But I think a very recent story, and I had shared this about a month ago in another discussion, but it's a story that brings so much joy to me that I think I feel very compelled to share it whenever I get a chance. And this story is about a small little town in Kerala where there is a temple of Murugan. And in 2017, very recent, what happens is there is a young Muslim boy whose friends are also our friends are playing with him basically, and they all go closer to the temple to play. Now, when they are playing, some of these boys happen to be Hindus. So they go and they ring the temple bell and they go inside the temple. This boy also goes, because children don't have these distinctions that adults create. These constructs mean nothing for them. So when this little boy goes over here along with them, at that point, that night when he comes back home, his friend's parents have gone and told him, you know what your son did? He went and he prayed in the Hindu temple. So the boy gets admonished at home saying, you should not have done that. Now the boy has gone to sleep and the parents have discovered that the boy has gotten a terribly high fever. So then the next day he's taken to the doctor and a host of treatments begin. He's put on antibiotics, etc. But nothing has any effect on the boy. He continues to be in this state. And one thing is, he becomes delirious. So he stops going to school. He has like 102 fever. So when in that state of delirium, the boy is only saying one thing. He's saying Muruga, 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 Muruga. So that is the temple that he visited. So somebody hears the boy saying this and tells the parents, look, you admonished him for going to that temple, but now the boy is only saying Muruga. So the only solution to this is go, take the boy to the temple and he will be cured of whatever it is that he's having. So the parents agree and they decide to go to the temple. So when they go to the temple, again, it's the first time for them. They've not necessarily been to a temple before, right? So when they go to the temple, somebody tells them that you should take some offerings inside and go. So in front of the temple, they're buying some flowers and fruits and a few things to offer to the deity inside. And at this point, the boy is also with them. So the boy is also, it's been feverish, he's been unhappy, he's been uncomfortable in his body. And little children, when they are uncomfortable and they can't express it, they cry. So the boy starts to cry. So he looks at his father and his father says, what do you want? And he points at a munch, the chocolate munch, right? So he points at a munch and he says, I want that. So the father buys him that munch and puts it in his hand so that the boy is appeased. They go inside the temple and they give the offerings to the priest. Now, when they give the offerings to the priest takes whatever it is that they have to offer and he looks at the little boy and very instinctively, very intuitively, without being asked, the boy takes the munch that he had and he gives it to the priest and he says, it's for God. Now the priest takes this munch and he says, okay, sure. And he offers it along with the other things. He places the munch also at the feet of Muruga. So this is done. And when they go home that night, the next morning, the boy is miraculously cured of his fever. He has no fever at all. And this news spreads like wildfire. And this news has spread so much like wildfire that now Muruga in this particular temple has been renamed as Munch Murugan. And if you Google Munch Murugan after this call, you will see that Munch Murugan is become so popular that now you can offer a mala of Munch chocolates. You can get a Tulabharam Seva. Tulabharam is basically measuring your body weight equivalent in a certain substance, and you donate that body weight equivalent to the temple. People get Tulabharams done now in Munch. So it's quite amusing how more than what the boy's intention was. So here Munch Murugan may have become popular, and that's very cute as a story. But this idea that bhakti sulabha, that just through simple bhakti, the boy offered what Shastra Jnanam, what Mantram, what Tantram. Did the boy see that, oh, it is Shashti, it is Kritika Nakshatram, it is Mangalwaram, it is good for Subramanya Aradhana? Nothing. He just said, I want to give whatever I have. This is Bhagavad Gita. Phalam Patram Pushpam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati. You give me whatever you have, just through bhakti, I will take it. And that boy is cured of his fever as a reminder that is two things. That is bhakti mahima and that is kshetra mahima. Because when both these combine together, the person who receives it receives a wholehearted blessing because they went with a whole heart. They went and offered that whole heart into him. So here, instead of getting into intellectual discussions of what is the power of that kshetram, the simple story talks about what does bhakti do to Bhagavan. Up till now, we've been talking about what is happening to a bhakta. But what does bhakti do to Bhagavan? It melts Bhagavan's heart. That is how powerful bhakti is. And that idea represents itself not just in this kshetram, but anywhere you go, where you look at how powerfully a bhakta can change Bhagavan's attitude towards them. This is seen also in the phenomenal temple in Andhra Pradesh, where the Lord is present on top of a mountain. The Lord is present as Ramachandra, and the Lord here is known as Vaikuntha Rama, and he is present with Sita Devi on his lap, on his left lap, with Lakshmana Swami behind them. There is no Anjaneya Swami in the sanctum sanctorum of this temple, because it is believed that here is where Sita, Rama, and Lakshmana visited during their Vanvasa. So here the Lord is present atop of Bhadragiri, and on top of this Bhadradri mountain, where the Lord is present. Whenever we think of this kshetram, we automatically end up thinking of a bhakta, Bhadrachal Ramdas, one who moved the entire state of the temple and managed to move it from a small little shrine into the massive complex that it is today. So Bhadrachal Ramdas, when he spent his own money to actually have the Jeevnodharana, the Prana Pratisthapana for the Vigrahams, etc., all of that done, because the Vigrahams were there from before that of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. When he did all of this, what had happened was that some money was used. And when this money was used, news was sent to the Nawab that he has been using taxpayers' money, and he has been embezzling funds, and he has been using those funds to construct the temple. So Bhadrachal Ramdas was put into jail, not for 1 or 2 days, but for 12 long years. And in the process of those 12 long years, Bhadrachal Ramdas vents out all his fury to Bhagavan. So this is the aspect of bhakti, that bhakti enables you a relationship with Paramatma where you can scold him, you can scream at him, you can yell at him, you can do what you want, provided you are doing it with bhakti. That idea of bhakti is present today in a lot of musical works as Ninda Stuti, where you are actually praising him, but you are also happy, you don't mind saying anything negative to him. And Bhadrachal Ramdas, at some point, he writes composition saying, he appeals to Rama, saying, Rama, oh, one who is atop Bhadrachalam, please come and save me from here. But Rama doesn't come. Finally, he writes one composition where he looks at Rama and he gives him a list, he gives him an account of what all it is that he has spent and what all it is that he has spent on the temple. And in those accounts, at the end of that account, he says to Rama, he says, kiske baap ka maal hai? If I have to translate what he writes, Yavadabba Sommani, from Telugu to Hindi, the closest translation is, kiske baap ka maal hai? Who gave all this money? Did your father Dasharatha send it from Ayodhya? No, he did not. Did your father-in-law Janaka send it from Mithila? No, he did not. Where did you get this from? This is what I gave. So it is your responsibility to be able to come and relieve me of this. So therefore, please come soon, Ramachandra. That is reflected in a musical composition of his. This is not something that is not a fraction of figment of my imagination. This is something that he himself writes. So this idea that bhakti gives you that power to be able to say, hey, kiske baap ka maal hai? Tu aakar apna kaam kar. And Bhagavan does come. Because post this, the story goes that one night to the king, two men appear, Ramoji and Lakshmoji appear, and they give the king 2 sacks full of coins and say, here is the money that Ramdas used to build the temple, and we are returning it with interest. Those coins are preserved in the temple of Bhadrachalam today. So if you ever make a visit there, you will see them over there. But this story is about the power, again, of Kshetra Mahima. It is also about the absolute unabashedness in bhakti. And while there are a host of other themes that we can explore in the realm of Kshetras and Bhaktas, I think one important idea to hold on to is simply that bhakti is simply about anubhuti. It is not about finding out more. It is not about where can I read up more, where can I amass more information, because information goes here, but bhakti stems from here. And as long as this gap is present between these two, the journey for a bhakta is always a struggle. When it is only from the heart space, a bhakta automatically experiences. So what does one have to go to a kshetra and do? Does one have to go there and stand for hours in a queue and say, okay, I don't mind if I have to get a VIP darshan, or I don't mind if I need to pay some more and bribe somebody? No, one just has to go to a kshetra and be in the kshetra. By virtue of being in that kshetra, Paramatma's attention falls on us. Kshetras are meant for sadhana. Sadhana is not a big word. It's not a complex idea. It's about showing love. I think one of the most beautiful examples of kshetra darshanam that somebody gave me was, it's like going to Nani ka ghar. That once, when one goes to Nani ka ghar, one is so happy that one forgets every other thing. That is how we go to a kshetra. That one just goes there and says, Bhagwan, I'm here. And when you go to him with that approach, there is absolutely no looking back, because he will recognize that you have come. He, she, call them in whatever form it is that you wish to. But today, I think on that note, keeping in mind and keeping in interest that we are slowly wrapping up, we take all of these offerings from the kshetras that we visited, some in longer, Kashi Kshetram, Muruga Kshetram, today is also Shashti, and Ashlesha Nakshatram, which are dear to Muruga. So on Shashti, we had the bhagyam of being able to share a little bit about Muruga. And we leave ourselves and our hearts completely in Bhadrachalam at the feet of Sita Rama, with the hope that our kshetra darshanams and our gaze towards kshetras gradually changes, that we become sensible, sensitive, responsible bhaktas that carry in our hearts only love for Paramatma as we make that journey. With that, offering this to the Pada Padmas of Sri Sita Lakshmana Bharata Shatrughna Hanumat Sameta Sri Ramachandra Parabrahma, Padarvindarpanamastu Swasti.
Thank you so much, Vinay. That was an excellent exposition for, I think, for about an hour, and you brought alive so many kshetras, especially Kashi. Kashi we all know about, but you really infused a new meaning into Kashi Kshetra by bringing that story alive. And also bhakta, the kind of bhaktas, the angry bhakta, the kind bhakta, the devout bhakta, the various facets of bhakta that you brought out were also absolutely engaging. Some of these stories all of us have heard in snatches and bits here and there, but to hear it all together like this and in the fullness and the way you narrate it, it's goosebumpy to say the least. And really, I'm sure 50% of the people on this call want to catch a flight to Kashi tomorrow morning. I'm pretty much sure about that. And
that's the greatest fortune I can
that's how you brought it alive for all of us. Thank you so much, Vinay. I will now ask Swamiji and Swamini to please say a few words. Swamiji, can you go first? Swami Brahmavidananda ji.
There is a whole tradition of storytellers, kathakars in India. Very traditional people, very orthodox people, whom the youngsters of today may not be able to relate much to. But we have someone who's young, who's modern. You're a bhakta, well-informed bhakta. So that's a great thing. I pray to the Lord that all his blessings are with you. And may you reach out to more people and help a lot more people discover the bhakti in themselves. Thank you for being with us.
It's such an honor to hear these words of blessing. I'm hearing them and I'm having goosebumps. It's such an honor, Swamiji. Thank you so much.
Swamini.
Yeah. Thank you, Vinay. We've heard the story of Rakta Bija, so Devi Mahatmyam, that as an Asura, he had the boon that if a drop of his blood touches the ground, one more Asura would come and the army would expand. And in a very twisted way, I'm reminded of this because I believe that your sharing of Bhakta, Kshetras, Bhakti, basically, will allow these drops of blood, not quite, but drops of Bhakti to fall all over. And from every drop, a Bhakta will arise. So these drops of Bhakti, they, of course, are in everyone's heart, and you're basically awakening a loving person, a simple, loving person that is lost in a lot of complexity. And so these drops of bhakti, may they continue to nourish Bharat Varsha and bhakti in everyone. And lots of prayers. You are blessed with Devi Shakti to do this. And may more bhaktas arise. So thank you very much. Dhanyavadaha.
So moved. I don't know what to say to a blessing like this, but thank you so, so much for this opportunity. When you reached out yourself, I couldn't believe it. I read the email twice or thrice to wonder how is it that, a space like this, which has been honoring so many spiritual traditions, is giving an opportunity like this to me. It really, really means a lot. So I cannot thank you enough, but deeply, deeply grateful.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you once again.